Hello and welcome to today's Heartlift with Janell. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited today to have with us Caris Snider. She has written the phenomenal Anxiety Elephants for Tweens, now has one for girls and for boys. And we have the honor and privilege of hearing from her voice, and actually hearing her heart on how we can better equip the next generation to deal with this unprecedented anxiety and overwhelm. Did you hear that in my voice? I just had to take my deep breath before we start. So welcome, Caris. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me and taking that deep breath for all of us, because I think we all feel it. It's a collective feeling.
It is collective and it's global. That's what's different.
Yes.
And I think that's what all the experts are leading us to. It wasn't just a United States trauma as 911. Of course, that had ramifications across the world. But this global pandemic, has affected the entire world, shut down. And that is unprecedented, obviously. And so I asked you before we came on, Caris, and by the way, your name does mean grace, doesn't it?
It does. Yes.
So I wanted to name one of my children Caris, but our last name has two R's, Raridan. So it's like Caris Raridan was like a lot of R's. So I have a strong affinity for that name. It just is such a beautiful part of God, Caris, his grace. I was asking you what's on your heart today. And so I would just love for you to share with our community, our Heartlifters.
Yeah. So, we were talking earlier just about how our kids, they're being attacked so much by the enemy now. And yes, he's always been after them, attacking them, but now he's not hiding it. Like there is no hiding.
There's no lurking.
No lurking. I mean, it is a full-on attack. War is waged on their souls, on their minds, on every part
Their identity.
Their identity, who they are. They're so confused. They don't have a firm foundation. They don't know how to make it. And they're so pulled into wanting to be accepted, wanting to appear as though they accept others. And they're not getting truth. They're not getting truth.
Right.
And so I think it has been just over the last couple of years, I've just become so passionate about equipping them for war. I wish I could go back to the good old days where we're just protecting them, putting them in a bubble.
Oh, I know.
My eyes have been opened to see they're not in a bubble. And if we don't keep them in a bubble, if we don't protect them, if we don't equip them, they're not going to be ready. They're not going to be prepared. So it is time we stand in the gap. We have the hard conversations. We talk about these real things, because if we don't, the enemy will get to them before we do. And I get so fired up just thinking about it. And I just want to encourage everyone in this battle. We don't have all the answers. We're going to make some mistakes along the way, but God's grace, God's goodness, he's going to meet us there. He's going to meet them there. And he's going to help us all walk through this together, because they have been created, this generation, for such a time as this.
They have.
Exactly. This is their moment,
It is.
And God's calling David's, he's calling Joshua's, he's calling Ruth's, he's calling
some
Lydia's.
Ezekiel's, he's calling some prophets to do some crazy things. Right.
That's right. And so we have to do our jobs to mentor them, be those Pauls, and mentor them. And so that's why we're here. That's what we're doing. And we're mentoring them, preparing them mentally, sound minds.
Yeah. Because I always think of Daniel. I just think of Daniel so much. And I think, when we talk about pandemics and shutdowns and lockdowns and exiles and all of these things, there is nothing new under the sun. So I want to preface this conversation with you, Caris, because I feel like you've got your finger on the pulse. And so if you're new to the podcast, my worldview, if you don't know, is from the Judeo-Christian worldview, a biblical worldview, the lens at which I see the world, the glasses I put on every day. I see them through, a faith lens. I follow the ways of Jesus. I follow his word. On the other hand, I want to have open conversations, because I feel like if we can't come to the table, and that's why you're here, Caris, to help us, because I know from kindergarten anymore, what's going on if your children happen to be in a public school setting. And I went to have a test yesterday in a hospital system, just recently had a hip replacement surgery. And the receptionist leaned in, where they check you in, and she leaned in. It was very interesting. And she whispered, and she said, "We now have 2 new questions that we have to ask all of our patients." And I'm like, why is she whispering? I'm like, what is getting ready to happen?
What is happening? Yes.
I know. And I'm like, I was so nervous. Anxiety elements marched right in. And she said, "Are you the same sex as when you were born? And how do you identify yourself?" And I said, "Why do you have to whisper?" And I said, "Wow, that's incredible that is now." And so I am not judging. I won't sit in a seat of judgment, but I want to expose and what's the word? Espouse, actually.
Yeah,
espouse what we believe is the truth. And if you're listening and you don't know the truth of Jesus, then hear us out.
Right.
Hear us out, because we have to have these kind of conversations. Because I feel like, Caris, I said to you, I now have 3 grown adult children who are now bringing me my little grandbabies. And I wish, I was walking before this interview, praying, and just like, I wish I had, and I call it the emotional language. I had a propensity towards it, obviously, because of who I am. But I didn't go back to get my master's in counseling until my 50s. So they were already in college. And so what can we do? Help us so that, because there were mistakes made, I'm saying, I spiritually bypassed, which we now know as a term. I would say, well, we'll just pray about it. Or I didn't slap the scripture. I honestly meant the scripture, we prayed. I didn't know another tool. I didn't really know how to, of course I would say, hey, talk to me.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. But I really did not have what I have now.
Right.
And so, but you do. Okay. So anxiety elephants. First of all, love the elephant theme.
Thank you. Yes.
Love it. Where did that come from?
Right. So this is a question I get quite a bit. Yeah. And I started out as a speaker, not really ever intending to write, but God does that. He takes us in different paths. And when I would share my story, I would kind of describe anxiety for those who had never experienced it. And the example, the picture that I would give them would be that it feels like this elephant sitting on your chest, right? If you're listening, if you've experienced anxiety, you're probably like, oh yes, it's this heavy weight. Yeah. And so that's kind of what the Lord took me to. Anybody can get this visual of anxiety elephants. Oh yes, it's a weight. It's hard to breathe. It's hard to move. You're just kind of paralyzed. And so that's kind of where that visual came from. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've been to Kenya and I've been on safari and I've seen those big mama elephants out there. Right. It's a matriarchal society. They are all towing the line behind her. And you're like, don't want her to sit down next to me or on me. No way. So you actually did have your own anxiety elephant, Caris. And I would love for you, if you wouldn't mind, sharing just a peek into how this actually came out of your own, which is very typical for authors, for our work to come out of our own pain and suffering and experience.
Yes. And I am so grateful that God takes what the enemy meant to defeat us, to kill and destroy us, and he turns it and he uses it for good. And I am grateful to just be sitting here alive with you today, because 11 years ago, that was almost not the case. And I found myself,
to believe.
And just this place where I was filled with anxiety. I was filled with anxiousness. Now I was a master of the mask. Let me tell you.
There we go.
Master of the mask.
We should have an organization, Masters of the Mask.
We should.
Let's take it off. I
That's
know.
right. We are in recovery. But
We are in recovery.
We're in recovery. I mean, my husband and I, we were leading worship at the time. I had a successful business going on in my home. My daughter, who is now about to be 14, she was living her best toddler life at the time. So everything appeared great.
Yeah.
Physically, I was skinny. I was losing weight. People would ask me, hey, what are you doing? So I appeared perfect.
Yeah, when we lose weight, that's not usually a bad thing.
Right.
It's like whole nother conversation.
A whole other conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this weight of this mass that I was carrying, it started to get really heavy. And what I was dealing with on the inside did not match the outside. And I was just struggling to keep up this expectation, this look of perfection. I was terrified to fail. I didn't want to fail people. I didn't want to fail God. I didn't want to let anyone down. I had convinced myself that I had to be perfect, that I couldn't have problems for God to use me. Now, I think that's a plot of the enemy to get so many of us who do follow Christ, who are believers, and we are afraid if we make a mess, if we have a mistake, well, that's it. God can't use us anymore, you know?
Well,
that
I'm going to interject here.
Let's go to the Bible.
Yeah, I'm going to interject, and I am going to interrupt here just for a second, because that actually comes from a very real space that we weren't allowed to.
Right.
We really just weren't. Now, I married a man who was married before. Now, I was, we're talking 1984. Yeah. And we went to a very small New Testament church and charismatic. And I remember I thought, wow, he's a great guy. When I met him, he was separated. And I just remember people saying to me, Janell, you cannot marry someone with the big D. It will impede your ministry. It will hold you back. The only one who didn't say that was actually my pastor, because he had walked with my husband through the whole entire experience. And at that time, it was like, be above reproach.
Yeah.
Do not give the enemy any footholds, and that won't impede, so it was this weird theology and teaching. And I thought, oh my gosh, so if I'm going to wear a scarlet D. So we come by this honestly. And I know a lot of my community is 35 and older, a lot. And I think a lot of the women my age, 50s, 60s, 70s, we know that well.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful. There's so much more freedom, but it's still not to the point where we really AIR, hang up any mental and emotional problems for sure.
Yeah.
Like I'm walking around with a cane right now. So people are very aware that I'm going through something. But when you have a mental, emotional problem, you don't carry anything that shows that. We try to cover it up like you did.
Cover it up. That's what I did. And I can remember at that time in my life, when young girls would come to me for encouragement, for advice, for wisdom about anxiety, if they were depressed, I will be honest with you and tell you, I did not think it was real. My attitude to them was that they were feeling sorry for themselves, that they were whining. And so my advice to them would unfortunately sound something like this. You need to pray harder. You need to read your Bible more. You need to trust God more. And if I knew you really well, I would say something to you like, well, you just need to suck it up, Buttercup.
Oh yeah. Buck up, baby.
Yeah. And that is not the compassion of Christ. He doesn't meet us with that. But I learned that through going through what I went through. And I found myself, I would just at random times, my heart would just race. I couldn't catch my breath. I would be driving down the road and feel like I was going to wreck, or that something bad was going to happen. And I would just be paralyzed in fear, but I wouldn't tell anybody.
How old were you? Can you give us age, like age when you were driving, and then the age when you would offer that? Because I'm assuming you were a leader. I
was in my late 20s, almost 30 at the time.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know.
You were schooled well, though. You were schooled, but that is how we were schooled. And that's why we all have to take the shame blanket off of us and offer the curiosity and the self-compassion. And we have the language to do that now. I didn't even know what shame was until Dr. Brene Brown started talking about it. It's like, oh, that's right. I have that.
Yeah.
Right.
And I can remember I would feel shame when those things would happen. Like,
Yes.
what is this? What did I do wrong?
Thank
What
you.
did I do? And so then I would belittle myself, and I would have this ping pong ball going back and forth in my head of the shoulds. You should be trusting God better. You should be doing this. Why aren't you doing other things? And I would just belittle myself, and I would put myself down. Those less words, you're hopeless, useless, worthless. And then I found myself trying to numb the pain of the anxiety, and I used food. I used exercise. I would starve the pain.
Me too.
I would over exercise. I would work out 2 and 3 hours a day. I didn't even eat 1,000 calories a day. I would drink gallons of water. And I found myself in this place where I had a pretty legit anxiety attack. I was frozen on my couch thinking my 2-year-old daughter is going to come in here and find her mommy dead on the floor. Because I didn't know what was going on.
I know. I'm sorry that our system didn't do better.
Yeah. Well,
but that's why we're here.
That's why we're here, because God brought healing through that.
Yeah.
I did call my mom. She was a safe person for me to call.
Hallelujah. That's amazing.
Right? I was grateful for that. And she told me, she said, Caris, you got to go to the doctor. You need to go right now just to make sure everything is okay. And at almost 30, I knew not to argue with my mother, that I needed to go do
Good girl.
what she said. And I did. But you know what? When I got there, I can remember telling those nurses, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I'm a burden to you today. I'm sorry for having to do this. I'm so sorry. And I had an amazing nurse, and she looked at me and she said, you do not have to apologize. This is why we're here.
Yes.
This is why we are here. And she just offered me so much comfort in that moment. My husband came to get my daughter, who was crying because she didn't know what was going on with her mommy. My husband was like, what's happening? I was like, just go. Because I didn't want him to see me that way. And the doctor told me, hey, you're having an anxiety attack. Your heart is fine. You're having an anxiety attack. And of course, at that moment, I argued with him, told him he was wrong. I'm good. I'm fine.
Please tell me it's something besides anxiety.
Yeah, anything else.
Anything but.
Tell me something that's really real that I can.
I can't go tell people I'm having anxiety.
That's right. And even tell me something that I can fix by myself.
I know.
That I don't have to let others in. But that's not what it was. And that's not the path. And so it just got worse and worse for me. And then I moved into a place of dread, depression. I mean, I dreaded getting up every day. I thought I was a burden and a bother to everyone around me. And the bottom of the bottom for me, I ended up getting pregnant, which was a miracle in itself. But I was getting closer and closer to 100 pounds. And the doctor, she said, Caris, you know what? I don't care if you eat donuts for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. For the sake of the baby, eat. And 2 things happened that day. That mama bear instinct kicked in.
Yes,
take care of the baby. Take care of that life. But also, if a doctor says you can eat donuts, breakfast, lunch, and dinner,
please.
I mean, come on. Yeah, we're going to eat the donuts.
Sprinkles,
all the flavors. So I did. I ate a lot of donuts, and I gained about 6 pounds in 8 weeks.
Wow.
But I lost a baby. And that was the bottom. And of course, the enemy comes in. He says, look what you did.
I feel like I'm looking in the mirror, actually. Our stories are very similar.
And then it was just, everyone would be better off without you here. You're not needed. You're not wanted. You don't have a purpose. You need to go. And that was in the moment where God truly met me, and he just whispered, look up. And when I looked up, I thought I was going to be alone. I thought I was going to be rejected. And when I looked up, that lie of the enemy was met full force with God's truth. Wow. There were the helpers. A counselor was there for me. Wonderful. A doctor was there for me. My family, my friends, they showed up and they said, we love you. We love you. Wow. And I'm grateful for that. And then as I began to learn how to think differently, how to respond differently, but I also learned with a friend one day when she said, hey, Caris, how are you? Our daughters were having a play date together. And I didn't go back to, I'm good. I'm fine.
Wonderful.
I will never forget that day. I said to her, I am dealing with a lot of anxiety and depression. And I'm telling you, with tears in her eyes, she looked at me and she said, you too? And I was floored. And I said, yes, me too. Why? Why are we not talking about this? Why are we not letting each other in? Yeah. Right. And we found comfort and solace in that day, knowing we weren't alone. We were not
Yes.
alone, that it
That's
wasn't
good.
just her. It wasn't just me. There are millions of us who are struggling and dealing with that. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's where God began to say, this is what I'm calling you to. This is your ministry, to speak truth, to bring faith and mental health together. Use your story, use your experience, use what you learn to talk about it, to change the narrative, to allow us in the faith community to no longer put our heads in the sand about it because maybe we don't truly understand, but be a leading voice.
Yes.
Learn, be open, to help people. And I went through a lot of counseling. My doctor helped me. And in counseling, I realized a lot of this started when I was a child.
I was going to ask that.
Unhealthy habits, which is why the Tween books, I guess I'm so passionate about those.
Yes.
This is where it all began.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I was bullied as a young child. So through that,
that's what I wanted to know.
I taught myself to hide, push it down, don't tell anybody, just pretend like everything is okay. I put this expectation of perfection on myself, to don't fail, don't make a mistake, don't put yourself in any kind of situation where you could be picked on or rejected.
That's it. Again. That's really it. It's like, I'm not going to feel that feeling again.
Not going to.
I want to ask this if I can.
Yeah.
I have two thoughts, but this main one was not on the agenda, but it sounds from hearing your story that you were raised in what we call secure attachment. So I'm very strong, pound the table to get everyone in the world, every parent particularly, to understand what secure attachment is. Because if a child can move through life having that capacity of being seen and heard and loved and known and cared for and safe and secure, you had that. It sounds that way. Yeah. Okay. And I always say this because I did not, and so I came with an insecure attachment. I've had to do a lot of ladder work, but it sounds like you had that. And so a lot of people say, well, it must be nice. They won't have to deal anything. And I'm like, no, that's not true. I mean, you can have a great, not perfect home life, family of origin with secure attachment, but yet come into schools or athletics or dance classes or wherever, like you just said, and be bullied or something. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, that's correct. Okay. Now, and part of this bullying for me, I have a mild form of cerebral palsy in my left side.
Oh.
So I was physically different to the other children. Now, my parents were very adamant. I have a twin brother as well.
Do you? I have a twin boy girls.
Do you?
I do.
I am older by 1 minute. I don't hold that over.
She's older by 5
anymore. That's funny. I used to when we were younger, but I don't hold that over him. Now, he did not have a physical disability. So my parents, they worked very hard to help me know that disability did not get to define my ability, that I could participate and be involved with other things like other children. May have to work harder, may have to look to do things a little bit different, but I could do that. Now, early on, this is where the bullying began for me because I was different. So they made fun of the way that I looked, the way that I walked, the way I would hold my arm up. And so that's where I experienced, for me, that rejection, that being different and not wanting to be put in that situation again. So that's where my parents never did this to me. I put the expectation of perfection.
Okay. It's just who you were born in the world to be.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that disability did not get to hold me back. So I just put on, my worldview just became so obsessive. Maybe obsessive is not the right word, but just so, it was just imperative that did not defeat me.
Ain't happening again.
Right.
I think a lot of us do that. We dig our heels in. I don't want to feel that feeling, whatever that feeling. I definitely had that in my life. I think most of us have had that feeling. And subconsciously we kick into gear. It's all subconscious.
It is.
And so, I actually just call, like, you're just one of our high functioning, anxious people.
I was very good at high functioning. Yes. Type A. I mean, us Type A people, we're
super
really
good at high functioning. I think it's the human spirit, but not everybody kicks into high functioning. And that's not a good thing. I mean, it looks like a good thing because it's what culture and church culture applauds.
Yeah.
Wow, she's a go-getter. Look at her. She can do 12 things at once. Wow. Yeah.
But we're not looking at the issue. We're not looking at
We are
what's
not.
really going on. Why is there such a push to do that? And,
Mm-hmm.
for the way that my parents grew up, and I'm curious for you, maybe even your parents, they were taught, push it down, move
Push it
on.
down.
My
Mm-hmm.
grandmother, put that lipstick on and you keep going.
And the heels and the hose.
And the heel. Yeah. And so they naturally, that's what they taught. That's
I
just
know.
because what they grew up in, and it didn't diminish their love for me, but that's what they knew. And so now we're learning more, thankfully, how to do some things differently, how to talk about some things. And I had a very powerful moment with my mom. I was going through counseling, and she called me one day and she said, Caris, is there anything that you need to tell me that I did that hurt you, or just really, caused you some hurt feelings? And I mean, tears just welled up in my eyes, and I told her, and she said to me, I'm sorry.
Oh, I know.
I'm
It's so
sorry.
hard.
And
It's
I
so
knew that
tough.
was hard for her. But
So
that was
tough.
such a
Oh.
powerful, such a powerful moment for my mom to be willing to look back and say, I made a mistake. And I think that's good for us as parents to be willing to say to our kids, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I didn't get it right. And I think that if we do that even now with our littles, with our tweens, with our teens, how much grace does that give them to realize, oh, I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to put this pressure on myself because there's so much pressure. So when we give that room, that safe place to do that, even as a 30-year-old, man, that was so powerful in my relationship with my mom.
I'm so happy you said that.
Yeah. And that gave me freedom to begin doing that now with my almost 14-year-old and 10-year-old daughter, to say, hey, it's okay. It's okay. It's the right thing to apologize, and to teach them. This is part of growing up. This is part of learning. We do not figure it all out when we're adults and parents.
Oh, no. And I think
we still have a lot to learn.
That's my absolute number one passion, is for men and women, parents to, I always say in my practice, like, the very first step with the family system is to say, today's a new day.
Yeah.
Okay. We went today and we got some help. I have a family contract that I sent home with them, and, and you sit down and it's not fun and it's terribly, awkward. But sit down and say, it's a new day. Mom and dad got to learn some new ways of doing things. And so today we're going to start being healthy, and here's what's unhealthy. And if that, in my ideal world, that would just happen in every home. Wow. The world would be a different place. So thank you. I had a quick second question that I had when you were being cared for.
Yeah.
So I wonder when that nurse spoke to you and she offered you grace, what did that feel like?
I don't know if this is the answer you were expecting, but I kind of pushed back. I was just like,
okay, there you go.
No,
that's good.
Yeah. I was like, I don't deserve this. How can you love me in this moment? How can you care for me when I am bringing all of this, mess and disaster and all of this in? So it was very difficult for me to hear that and let that in, but she just continued to speak it over me. I'm here for you. This is why I'm here today. So in that moment, in that day, it was hard for me just because of where I was at mentally, to just let it in. I think sometimes when you're going through anxiety or depression, I kind of was comfortable in that place because I thought, this is just the best as it's going to get for me. And hope was hard. It was hard to hope.
Yes.
Hard to hope.
And hard to offer yourself grace and self-compassion. We don't talk anything self in the Christian lingo. We're getting better. I mean, thank the Lord, it's getting so much better.
Yeah.
But self-love, self-compassion, self-care, not ever in our vocabulary, ever. My generation, never. Yeah. It was taboo. It was bad. And so I wonder if that moment in your life, because I just know that your voice, which we equate voice with value, worth, and dignity in this community, was that a moment as you can look back now and think maybe just a tiny bit of the elephant started coming off your chest?
Yeah.
Maybe, or was it?
I think, you know what? I think with dealing with that elephant, I began to realize, hey, I'm not supposed to do this by myself.
Good.
Galatians 6:2 tells us that we are not to bear the burdens alone. We are to bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. And that vision of me, we kind of put this vision of wearing a badge of honor. If we can carry it all, if we can do it all alone. And that's not true. That's not the case. So looking back at her, knowing that that is such a visual memory.
Yeah.
It was a moment where God began to show me, I don't want you to go through this by yourself. You're not supposed to carry all the burdens and all the burdens of everyone else. You're to share the load, help one another, go through this together, because she had something to offer. She had wisdom to offer me that I needed, that I did not have within myself. So she could offer me that grace. She could offer me that security that I needed in that moment. And so I think that's where God began to show me that that is practical, and that's an important skill when we are healing and learning how to respond differently for mentally things, even for our kids, to know, hey, you don't have to go through this by yourself. It's okay to ask for help. That's the right thing to do. Even when I'm in high schools, I'll tell high school kids, it is the right thing for you to do, to ask a safe adult, a safe person for help. And they will all just look at me and just kind of tilt their head and think, that's right. Like, that's not wrong. And I will say it multiple times. That is the right thing to do with those safe adults in your life. And so I think that's what that moment offered.
Perfect.
For me.
I love that so much. Oh, I could just, so many things. Do you mind, or do you have the book in front of you?
I do.
Oh, yay. I'm so glad. Would you mind reading the introduction? Because I just love it. Now I have the anxiety elephants
for tweens.
For tweens, not the boy or the girl. I have the overall, and it's page 9, I think.
Yes, it is.
10. I want you to read it.
Okay. All right. Here we go. The rumbling. Do you hear it? Can you feel it? You are walking, ready to shoot the ball or picking up your pencil for a test, and here they come. Anxiety elephants. You know the feeling, right? They sneak around in the bushes waiting for the right moment to strike. At this point, it's too late. There's nothing you can do to stop them. Suddenly, they pounce. A herd of elephants jump up and down on your chest. If you struggle with what I've described, know you are not alone. I hid my struggle against anxiety for a long time. I thought anxiety elephants, as I like to call them, only attacked me. I didn't know there were others who struggled with the same thing. Growing up, I dealt with a lot of anxiety, but I didn't know what it was. When I would get bullied or be afraid of something, my heart would race, or I couldn't sleep at night. Sometimes trying to get one breath out was exhausting. I will never forget in 5th grade waking up with blurry vision and extreme headaches. I told my parents my symptoms and they took me to the doctor. He asked if I was being bullied. He mentioned anxiety, and I was relieved to know what was happening inside my body. However, he didn't give me any solutions I could use to cope with and overcome my problems. Over the next 90 days, I want to give you what I wish someone would have given me to help stomp out those anxiety elephants. You will find scripture, tools, journaling pages to write your thoughts, and stomp steps. Anxiety uses repetition to invade your life.
Hold on. You froze right there.
Okay.
So just start with anxiety uses.
Okay. Anxiety uses repetition to attack. It doesn't use a million different messages to invade your life. The lies are always the same. In the following pages, you will find truth repeated to break the hold of untruths looping in your mind. Anxiety will not be allowed to overcome you. As you open each day, you will be equipped to do the overcoming. There will be some simple skills and some others a little more difficult. You may find certain days of stomping out anxiety elephants will feel a little silly. I hope laughter comes through those pages. Now, are you ready to stomp? Let's go.
Ready to stomp. I love it. Where's your conference? I'm ready to stomp. I want to be there. I want to help. I want to help kids stomp.
Oh, no. Oh, that would be so good.
What is a stomp? I want to know, what is a stomp step? Because at the end of each of the devotionals, you have a stomp step, and they are so good. I have already got a web of them that I think are so
I love that. So I have an adult version of anxiety elephants that we started with, and each day ends with an action step. But thinking as a tween, a 9 to 12-year-old, I'm like, they need more than just action. They need like a visual action word. So stomp.
I just love it.
Elephant stomp.
I was a tap dancer, so.
Right. You get it. So we want to stomp back. We want to stomp back against that anxiety. And when you are anxious, sometimes it's difficult to know what actions to take. You want to take an action, but you're just paralyzed. You don't know what to do. No. So each day there is a simple stomp step for these children, for these tweens, when their parents, if they're reading along with them, to know what to do, what action to enforce that day through their stomping. And so I tried that out on my own daughters. I was like, what do y'all think about this word? And they knew. They're like, oh, stomp. And they knew, as little kids, you dance, you learn how to stomp.
Oh, honey, you learn how to stomp. Yeah, I see a stomp choreography. I'm already there. We'll have a stomp choreography. We'll have a dance to teach at your conferences. Right. I am all over.
I love it. Yes.
I had a dance studio forever. So
that is so fun.
Stomping is fun. Stomping, I do a lot of stomping.
Yep. And there is even one day, I forgot how far it is into the devotional, where they can stomp on bubble wrap paper.
Perfect.
Right.
Love that. Every time I read, I'm going to read them. Excuse me. I'm going to read some stomp steps. Flashlight tag, one of my kids' favorite things to do. And every one of these that I read, Caris, I thought a whole family should be doing this.
Yes.
Like adults can play. I think play, my very first book with parenting, I was like, play is so powerful. It teaches so many things. You have journaling, doodling, which one of my daughters doodled so much, and I love it. Breath work, gratitude, body awareness. It just goes on. It's so good. This is to me, it's like anxiety elephants for the family, because most of us, Caris, and this is not an insult to anyone, so don't take it that way. The average reading age for most of us is 5th grade.
Right.
And when I read this, it is so helpful. Like I just already have the skill after reading it. Yeah. So I think, don't lose that. Translate that when you write to adults.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah.
Because it is so powerful. So thank you. I want to honor your time. Can I close by reading 3? Or you read 3. Maybe you read it, and I would like to just offer this as a closing meditation. We're trying to practice in this season the contemplative rhythms of stillness, silence, and solitude. And I'm adding audio meditations. It's one of my favorite things to do, actually, is to create audio meditations. And I saw this one as very visual and could be a beautiful one to end with. So Heartlifters, just take a moment. If you're driving, please don't close your eyes.
Please don't.
If you are home or walking, or maybe if you're walking, go find a park bench or just maybe take a moment to sit. This is a beautiful way, as we're trying to add in this practice of silence and stillness and solitude and meditation. So Caris, lead us.
All right, this is 3. The scripture focus for this is 2 Corinthians 12:10. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. When really hard things happen to you, it sticks in your heart forever. In 1st grade, a boy in my classroom gathered everyone around to make fun of me. I was born with a mild form of cerebral palsy, causing the muscles in my left arm to be really tight, and my foot was turned inward. He held his arms up like a bunny rabbit and began to hop around me, saying that is what I looked like. Pretty harsh, right? I went home and cried, but told no one. It looked like this friend used my weakness against me. I thought to not be made fun of again, I had to be perfect and never show my weaknesses. I was mistaken. We do not have to hide struggles like anxiety and pretend to have it all together. We can be open and honest about our imperfections with God. He can handle any difficult situation. Nothing is too hard for him. The Lord's strength comes shining out in our weaknesses. As we allow him into those places, they no longer have power over us. We have power over them. And the stop step: share a moment someone made fun of you. Talk to your parents or an adult you trust about this experience and ask for their help in finding God's strength to move forward.
Thank you so much. So, Heartlifter, take this to heart today. This is our lean in teaching moment, our growth point for today with Caris. She's invited us to think of a moment. Perhaps it was long ago or maybe yesterday, where someone made you feel small. They tried to take a piece of you. And first and foremost, I always want to invite you to take that to our Heavenly Father and then ask for help if you need more help. You know, we're here to help you. So, Caris, thank you so much. I just shower you with blessings with this work and can't wait to see how it unfolds in your life. Thank you for being honest and vulnerable and transparent. And just know there are a community of Heartlifters here for you if you ever need it, that you have a safe place.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be here with your community today.
You're welcome.